Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday Roast. Alex, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. I'm feeling very
Christmassy.
Is this very Christmassy? Is this the type of hat that everyone would appreciate? I mean, I'd love to get comments from people in the live chat. Is this a keeper?
The lamp is wonderful. We have Femi.
There we
There
go.
we go.
Hello.
Hey,
How's it going? It was lovely seeing you last night.
you too.
They're loving the Santa hat apparently. It's a keeper. Oh, is that a Christmas shirt?
No, it's just flowery. I haven't got anything Christmas. I don't think. I'll have a look.
Really?
I had some
Santa
tinsel
at the right
somewhere,
time.
but to put on the hat, but I can't find it now.
Alex didn't want to leave me out. Femi, please introduce yourself to our audience. I'm sure they know who you are.
So I'm Femi. I'm a political commentator, former Stop Brexit campaigner / second referendum campaigner, and I hate the Tories with every cell in my body.
And that's why you're on. Well, I mean, we've got a lot of reason to have a lot of hatred towards them, and
Yes.
it's not just us.
Yes. Well, their polling is doing pretty badly right now. Nadeem Zahawi was on the news shows today saying, "Oh, well, these polls just because there's not an election, these polls aren't to be listened to." No, if there was an election today, they'd be out. The only question is, can we get an election before people forget what they've done, or will people forget what they've done before we get to the next election? That's the main concern.
Well, it's interesting because Chester was this week. It was on the 1st of December.
Mm-hmm.
That by-election, and it was a trouncing. They got absolutely smashed. I've got some other interesting good news on that as well. But like the Chester by-election, I think worst since World War II. Is that correct? Did anyone else hear that? And Rishi Sunak is higher in the polls than Starmer, though, isn't he? As an individual. Has anyone else read that?
Yeah.
I've heard that argument made. Yeah.
I'm not too convinced, to be honest.
Well, I mean, so as far as that goes, it wouldn't surprise me if that's true, because one of the reasons that I was worried about Sunak is if you try and think from the public perspective of people that aren't particularly engaged in politics on a regular basis, I would struggle to find a difference between Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer. Their image is quite similar. They're both just these soft-spoken politicians, very, very prim and proper, very put together, cookie cutter politicians, and so I'm not surprised if their polling is quite close.
He's quite robotic. Both of them.
Mm-hmm.
I've compared Starmer to Soundwave from Transformers and the way he speaks, which is a bit mean but quite factual. And Sunak he is robotic. It's like we've got two defective droids.
Yeah, there was that really weird scene where where Sunak was giving a speech and he just stared at the camera for like 10 seconds.
And then he went.
And then walked away.
I feel it was interesting. In one of our previous shows, we had Professor Tim Wilson on. And he's obviously, for anyone who doesn't know him, he's an actor, as well as many, many other things. And we were asking him, what is it about Sunak that you feel is quite compelling? And he said it's like Tony Blair. He feels the way they speak, 3 words, pause, 3 words, pause, and then a full sentence, which is almost like a hypnotic way of like grabbing your attention. But it was really interesting comparing Tony Blair coming into office, where there's like whoops and cheers and shouts. And Sunak's got nothing, apart from our friend Steve Bray.
Yes.
Comparing music all the way down into Whitehall. But they are quite similar in the way they speak, dress, I think.
Well, you mentioned the notion of him being robotic. I think it's quite unfair that he's arguably more robotic than May, and May got the nickname Maybot. I'm thinking we should maybe call him, I don't know, Rishi D2. I don't know, something like that.
Is that a world first?
That's a world first.
Absolutely love it. Yeah, Rishi D2. I think that could catch on. You always want these little coin phrases, don't you? And it can be really damaging. I mean, John Major had the Grey Man, didn't he?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. Then, like, Spitting Image just roasted him on it as well.
Politicians being seen as boring is becoming an increasingly thing, and I think it's the reason why the Tories are struggling now is because essentially they got hooked on crack. Boris Johnson, Donald Trump, it's the same problem. They got hooked on these really, really big personalities, and now they're struggling to come down to what a more normal acting politician would be. Now, yes, and it's important to remember that Rishi Sunak is basically Boris Johnson, just without the extra flair. They're the same. They're the same thing. There are people that have lied their way. He was Boris Johnson's right hand man right up until a few months ago. They're the same. They're the same. They have no difference in values. It's just a case of him being more of a put together politician.
I'm going to play devil's advocate as usual, despite, I mean, that's why the red's there, to be honest. It's nothing to do with Santa. Although I always find the odd analogy between Santa coming out of a fireplace and Satan and the names. But anyway, that's totally going off topic.
Just slightly.
Just slightly. I've always felt that Boris Johnson was a liberal in many, many respects. There was far-right elements to his stuff. And I felt that Rishi Sunak seems to go more realpolitik in his stance. And that's why they've actually gone slightly to the left. Like a lot of the policies they announced, whether they implement them is different. But the policies they were announcing for the fiscal year was going to be related. It was almost pushing towards Labour's area. It was almost like they took the rug from out underneath them. And then what were your thoughts on that?
I'd basically say that they go wherever they think is popular. They're populists at heart. So if they look at, I mean, if you look at Rishi Sunak, this idea that he is this left-leaning, economically left-leaning person just because he's done things like furlough, just because of the recent statements. Look at his voting history. At every single opportunity he's had, he has voted to cut people's benefits and against raising sickness pay. So it is the against raising sickness pay that's key, because if you think about what people needed during the pandemic, it was to be able to get paid whilst they were off on illness. He is the reason why the welfare state in that particular section was so small, and yet somehow he's being praised for the one that had to build it back up after he voted to push it down. So these people that have just, but the problem they had was the idea that they would see a pandemic, see people basically have to leave their jobs and do nothing. People would have rioted to hell. It was a basic matter of self-preservation that they had to do stuff like furlough. There was no question of not doing stuff like that. And right now, given that we are now, according to the OBR, facing the worst fall in living standards since records began, if they didn't do something big, again, riots. So they are simply just doing the absolute bare minimum, as they always do. We've seen them time and time again. They will do the wrong thing until they're forced into a U-turn. So they always do basically what they can get away with. So I wouldn't take anything they do in terms of public funding and benefits now as some sort of sign that, oh, now they're a more progressive, a more caring, compassionate Tory party. No, they're just doing what they need to do to stay in power.
I could hear that slight anger in your tone. How did it feel to absolutely harangue Michael Gove?
Well,
that answered the question.
The UK.
It's very nice to meet you. I don't think we've been introduced.
No, we haven't. So do you think that Brexit has helped working class people?
And sorry, I missed your name.
My name's Femi. Do you think
Very
Brexit...
nice to meet you.
Difficult question to answer, actually, because there was the knowing I got that footage, knowing that I exposed him to the world on Brexit in ways that the mainstream media were not doing, asking him time and time again.
How's it
European Union and
fundamentally
democracy
helped?
has been upheld. Nice to see.
That has made things more expensive. Are you happy with what you've done to working class people?
Has Brexit made people poor? Has Brexit hurt working class people? And getting no decent answers from him, him basically fobbing off the question for 7 straight minutes until he eventually just lied, and he gave a non-answer, which then conflicted on itself. That was great. The actual psychological effect of that was difficult, though, because as somebody who came from childhood trauma, whose entire personality is based on self-control, at that Tory Party conference, I was stood outside the fences of that place, knowing that all the worst people in the country were on the other side of that fence. All the people that have caused all the damage we've seen over the last 6 years, they were all on the other side of that fence. And when I think about, like, my righteous anger is supposed to be aimed in one direction, it's all at them. So it felt very difficult being that close to all the problems in the country. And then when one of the biggest ones comes out, I have to be cool, calm, and composed and polite and even jovial with him, whilst he's being rude and condescending to me. His aides are laughing at me. One of them even laid hands on me at the end. And whilst I'm asking him about the damage he's done to millions of people, he is ridiculing me. He is making jokes about it. He's following me off. He's being patronizing. And so that was a difficult thing to deal with in the moment. And even, to be honest, for a couple of days after that, but it was important to get that done because the mainstream media is not doing it.
And just thinking about the power dynamic there, as you said, that he was in his bubble, he was in his element, he was surrounded by friendly faces and people who reinforce his point of view, and you were on your own there basically, facing him down. It was I wouldn't be able to do it. Hats off, literally. Hats off to you for doing that. But that's what's necessary. It needs to be done. So let's just maybe segue into Brexit. How is Brexit going, Femi?
I actually regret campaigning for Remain. I think this is good. I think as the Brexiteers say, a bit of poverty, a bit of struggle, it does the world a world of good.
Toughens people up.
Exactly.
Not very Christmassy.
I think it's important to really with Brexit. It's always important to go back to the beginning in the sense that often we heard things like Brexit betrayal. May was betraying the will of the people. Labour wants to betray the will of the people. Look at Brexit as a part of a larger story, and you just get more angry than you could possibly get, because there were bad people, obviously, that voted to leave, obviously. But especially the best thing about going around the country that I did was speaking to people on the street in leave voting areas and finding out what they actually wanted from Brexit. And yes, migration would have played a part. Migration was simply a secondary element to the main problem. Was they're in poverty. The system hasn't been working for them. It's allowed us to become the fourth most unequal countries, which means we have the resources to fix poverty, but we're choosing not to as a government. And the government points the finger at foreigners, migration, but the real core problem is the fact that we have a system that allows people to be exploited while the rich go about their day. And when you look at the parts of the country that voted leave, the North, Wales, the rural areas that haven't been getting the funding, that was the issue that the Brexiteers promised to address. That was the issue. They said, right, we recognize the system doesn't work for you. We recognize that you've been neglected for generations and that neither the left or the right has been working for you. But we're this new branch of Tories that's going to actually work for the people. We're the People's Party. We're focusing on the people's priorities. And what do they get? What did the North get? What did Wales get? The farmers screwed over. The fishermen screwed over. As far as public policy goes, we had the previous Prime Minister plan to literally push down the wages of people who are outside of London in civil servants, whilst protecting the wages of people who are inside of London. They wanted to give bankers, they cut bankers, the cap for bankers' bonuses. They wanted to give tax breaks to people earning over £150,000 a year. They left the North behind in terms of furlough. Remember when Manchester was trying to get furlough payments, but they only decided to give Manchester actual furlough payments when London went into tier 2. They wanted to they tried to take the best grades from state schools, give them to private schools. They didn't want to feed poor kids. Everything that has happened since that Brexit vote has been an utter betrayal of the very people who wanted Brexit. So it's not just that Brexit is doing damage, because that's the stuff that Remainers have always cared about. But when you look at the Brexiteer side of things, it's even worse. These people that saw the Brexit politicians as their last hope to actually have a real difference in their lives, and they got thoroughly hit in the face for it.
Wow. Great speech. You nailed it. I mean, that's exactly what's happened. It was meant to be a working class thing. But you've then got that split. You've got part of them that want this free trade thing, but that means that you destroy industry, working class. It's not about them. It's about the rich being able to make money. And then you've got the people at the bottom saying, no, we want protection. We want our industries back. We want production back. We want to have local jobs. Where's the ability for Brits to produce stuff and then sell it abroad? And that's this huge, which I don't really hear much being talked about in the mainstream media.
And it was painful, because I remember in 2019, I visited a farm, I think in Anglesey, and I spoke to some farmers there, and they were telling me, I was asking them, why are you supporting Brexit? The NFU's against Brexit, but you're supporting it now. And they said, well, we're supporting Brexit because we want to bring back British farming. We want to have a really protectionist system whereby we raise taxes on produce coming from other countries, and so everybody has forced to buy British, and we can revive the British farming industry. And I'm like, have you heard what Jacob Rees-Mogg and Patrick Minford have planned? They want to drop all the tariffs. They want to make sure that we bring in as much cheap food, and they will wipe you out. And that's when the problem with Brexit can start.
It's perfectly true that if you remove protection of the sort that has been given, in particular to the car industry and to other manufacturing industries inside the protective wall, you have got you're going to have a change in the situation facing that industry, and you are going to have to run it down. And it will be in your interest to do it, just in the same way that we ran down the coal industry and the steel industry. These things happen.
The wishes of the Brexit of the 52% were never compatible with each other.
Nope.
It was always a false majority.
Yeah, it was like a buffet being offered. Everyone, you can have anything you want. You can have no tariffs, you can have tariffs, protectionism, free trade. You could literally have anything that you want. And of course that meant it's just total dribble. But then that's the big advantage of being able to have that voting system, have that in place. When you haven't actually got a plan, you can't pick it apart. And because there were so many different parties all offering different things, whether it was like controlled immigration or protectionism or free trade. I mean, Daniel Hannan was like, he was saying you still keep free movement.
On the 26th of June 2016, he said that we would keep free movement. So 2 days after the referendum result, it was that when I saw that video, I was like, all right, cool. So this is entirely illegitimate. And I refer to the period between June 2016 and I think November 2018, when Theresa May got her deal. I refer to the Brexit debates, even before the referendum, as fighting on ice, i.e. you're trying to land a blow, but you're slipping and sliding all over the place. Why? Because Brexit hadn't been defined in any real way. The definition of Brexit from an international law perspective, because we're talking about international relations here, is abandoning the old relationship that we had with the EU. Now, the international relations is done on treaties. The old treaty was the Treaty of the European Union, the two treaties of the European Union. And so Brexit had to be moving to a new treaty relationship. And there's never been, and will never be, any agreement among the 52% as to what that new relationship will be. So it has always been mathematically impossible to deliver a Brexit that would actually be democratically legitimate, because it would never have the support of the majority. Whereas logically, and legislators hate to hear this, 48% was the real majority because we all voted for the same treaty.
Yeah.
Show me the treaty that the 52% voted for, and I'll take that back. But 48% voted for one treaty. That's it.
So, like a couple of questions. Like something I think about from time to time is if you were, for example, a stockbroker, and you had convinced people to invest in a particular piece of stock, a particular stock or a particular industry, and it turned out you were completely wrong, you would be ridiculed, and you'd probably leave the profession or leave that sector. But when you think of people like Daniel Hannan or Michael Gove or David Davis, these are people who have been completely wrong. And then you see them wheeled out, to talk to the media about Brexit or to talk about, like, how is it possible that these people can be so wrong, and then they're asked questions about, okay, can we get your opinion on how things are going with Brexit? And they'll just regurgitate the same stuff as they were basically saying back in 2016 with a bit of a spin. Like, for me, I really don't understand how the media allow this to go on. And there's another question, Femi, you were talking about, for example, the fishermen. And I really, it's a real head scratcher for me that the reaction from fishermen, like, they were trumpeted as, this is the reason we need to Brexit. There was so much political capital invested by the Tories in 2019 into fishing. And of course they were thrown under a bus or under a boat. What happened after? Nothing. Like, if you imagine what would happen in France, if the French fishermen had been treated the same way as the British fishermen, they would be rioting, farmers rioting. And why was the response from British fishermen so? The response was nothing. Why was that the case? Like I really don't. Like I'm struggling to come up with the words because I don't know why there was such a muted response.
So two things on that. One, they did do something, which was I think it was some point last year that they drove a big truck full of seafood down to Westminster, and I would like them to dump the fish, but they didn't.
But they drove around for a day and then went away again, didn't they?
Yeah. So there was a protest of British fishermen saying this is not okay. But yes, you're right. And the thing is, they had 3 years to say, actually, no, you don't speak for us. This isn't what we want. But they didn't. And they were used by the Leave campaign to say, this is why we need to leave the EU. And I honestly think that if they're not, given that the National Federation of Fishermen's Association is saying that they're on track to lose £300 million between 2021 and 2026, they know that this is damaging them. They know Brexit has hurt their industry. Them not being vocal and like forming an organization and like coming out and on the streets and saying Brexit was a mistake, we need to reverse it, blah blah blah. That just tells me that it's a pride thing. It has to be. That's the only reason, because you know what this has done. You've seen what this has done since January 2021. It can only be pride.
Pride doesn't pay the bills, though. Of course.
I was going to say, I just feel like we're quite passive. If this had happened in France, like when speed cameras got put up in France, not millions, but thousands of motorists took to the main highways and started ripping them down. Over here, we just sort of accepted it and went, oh, okay, that's speed camera. They pull this stuff off, and yeah, I think you're also right in part, Femi, about the pride. I mean, how do you go against something that you campaigned for about a year to 2 years, going, this is going to be great, and how do you just suck it up and go, actually, I was completely wrong? That's a lot. It's not that easy to do, and in many ways, you might even want to put your finger up against your own pride and say, no, I'm going to double down. It's gonna work. Give it time.
You got to take it down to a micro level, because these people will have friends, they'll have family, people who would have seen them within their community as, that's the fisherman that says we should leave the EU. I voted Brexit because my next door neighbor, he works in the fishing industry. Therefore, so there'll be so much personal capital invested in, I'm the local Brexiteer, because they're all going to be voting Brexit in order to save my fishing industry. It would take a lot of integrity to say, hi, everybody, I know you voted Brexit to help my industry, and I know that my industry's now suffered, your industry's now suffered, we're all poor, I was wrong, sorry. If you supported Brexit in 2016, we're cool. I get that. From if you vote the Brexit vote in 2016, most people were not. I mean, there are not 16, 17 million experts in EU law in the UK. People voted based on what they heard on TV and what they could find on the internet, and there was confirmation bias. Whatever newspaper you read will tell you which direction, what to search, etc. So I get it. But after 2016 to 2019, you watch the chaos for 3 years. So yeah, it is a mess.
I'll say there was a couple of things I was going to bring up. There's Chester, which was interesting, because the Rejoin EU party, which is this tiny entity, beat UKIP, which I thought was quite interesting. Now, UKIP, 3,000 members, and they take between 750,000 a year to 3 million, depending on what you read, and a number of things. Because obviously, I think a lot of them are now moving to the Reform Party, which is interesting because it means the right are finally split like the left, which will be a very interesting thing. So to see the UKIP party lose to Rejoin, and Rejoin got 1%, I think that's something that's quite interesting to see suddenly happen. I wasn't expecting that.
My question, however, is how did Reform do?
They were above Rejoin. Reform got,
I think they got,
I can't remember the percentage. It's like 2,700 votes, but they were just above Rejoin.
They're the main problem, because UKIP is kind of it's been very much a busted flux. I mean, Nigel Farage was the face of UKIP, and Nigel Farage, he will join our organization, he will make it as racist as possible, and then he'll move. And then once that brand is now toxic, he'll set up a new one. So it was UKIP, then it was Leave.eu, then it was Leave Means Leave, then it's the Brexit Party, now it's Reform. And he's just a chameleon that jumps from thing to thing. It's a shell game with him. So UKIP is now the Brexit Party because it's still him at the top. And so that's the main one that I'd be keeping our eye on. But yes, you're right. The right being split, that is a huge game changer in terms of how things are looking forward.
Is the left split, or have they united around Starmer at the moment within the Labour Party? Because it's very different. The situation within the Labour Party today is very different to 2019.
I'd say it's definitely better than it was in 2019, because it was an open civil war and had been for 3 years. But I still think there's a lot to do, because Starmer is not listening to the party on almost anything. He's got his Great British Power and Energy Plan, which I suppose could be good, and it definitely speaks to the left in terms of nationalisation of energy, but he still has some work to do. I mean, the main thing people are screaming for is PR, and he's just been completely obstinate on that. And it just feels, and it's the fear that I had right from the start, that we'd see a repeat of what happened between 2016 and 2019, whereby there's one policy that Labour members and left-wing voters all want, that they're screaming for the Labour leaders to do, and he just refuses and refuses until it's too late. And by the time you get to the election, he tries to pull out at the last second. And at that point, having spent 3 years saying it shouldn't happen, he's unable to run elections saying it should happen. And it just feels like history's repeating itself, which is very, very depressing.
He's very much like put himself into a corner. How can he not see that boxing yourself in a corner isn't a good thing? There's something interesting with that as well. As of last week, by the way, Fearless Wolf, thank you very much for
the super chat.
Yeah.
And if anyone would like to ask some questions, you can put them in the super chat. We'll read them out. I'll just read out.
Scrooge. I'm some sort of youthful Santa.
Alex started with a hat, so I had to follow on with a hat. So
Something's happened in the last week or this month, since the beginning of November. Brexit is hated as much as the Vietnam War, and it took Brexit 2 years to achieve what it took from 1955 to 1970. So it took 2 years to get the same level of hatred as it took the Vietnam War in 15, which is just like, wow. Or Prohibition, I've mentioned this before. Prohibition took 13 years to get flipped. So you're looking at these two humongous things and Vietnam obviously had a huge cultural impact on the United States with the hippie movement and peace and love movement and everything else in between. It's almost like, how have we managed? It's like breaking a record. like how are you as hated as the Vietnam War? It's like, what the hell have you done?
Maybe Sorry. Alex, Alex, you can, as a historian, you can confirm or deny this, but one of the reasons they said that the public turned against the Vietnam War is when it started to affect middle class people, because at the beginning they were drafting working class people into the war effort, but then when they started going after college students who were middle class, then there was pressure put on the politicians to go, okay, no, we need to stop this. So could it be a case of when businesses are suffering as a consequence of Brexit, when businesses start laying off people because they can't continue to operate, maybe it will start to affect more of the general public, because I think at the beginning, for a lot of people, Brexit was something abstract. Oh, look, it's about trade, it's about importation, exportation, it's about politics, but it doesn't really affect us. But now it's starting to affect more and more people. I'm talking about people maybe who didn't care about freedom of movement, who never traveled, who never considered moving abroad to work or to study. But now it's affecting more and more people directly. Maybe that's why I want to... Sorry, go on ahead.
So with the Vietnam War, with the draft, that's quite interesting, because that was being selected upon age and whether or not you're at university. But there was definitely this thing of you being able to buy your way out of it if you were rich enough.
If you had bone spurs.
I don't think any of the last few presidents have actually committed to war. I think there was someone who was claiming that the other day, that they all managed to Skype out of it, whether it was World War One, World War Two, or Vietnam, or Iraq, Afghanistan. I think pretty much all of them have Skyped out of it. There's probably a few exceptions, and I can't go all the way back, but someone pointed that out the other day. But yeah, like you could go and get a medical report and say you got bone spurs. You can go to university and just spend your entire time there, 6-7 years, doing a degree, a doctorate. That would be one way of doing it. But of course, you've got to pay through the nose to be able to do that. But that's it. When Nixon came in, he randomized it. He said, right, it's not based on anything. It's total random allocation of who's going to go. It was literally, it was like watching the National Lottery. You spin it and then they pull out a ball and then you've suddenly got a name being drawn out. And it's like, oh, right, I've just been balled out. And of course, you got a lot of draft dodgers as well, just legged it to Mexico, Canada, or went and hid and burnt the draft paper as well. So it's really interesting that you brought that up, because the thing that would actually get me more is the McCarthy trials, when they were in the 1930s and they were doing communist witch hunts, and they were looking for communists all over the place and claiming that communists had infiltrated everything. And one of the things that really freaked them out was the person leading it was Senator McCarthy. And he started reading out names that linked to the military. And as soon as that happened, the whole McCarthy trials, where they were searching for communists, got shut down. It's almost like when you hit this group that are the elite, or the rich, or the powerful, all of a sudden it changes everything. So I could imagine if you started hitting Jacob Rees-Mogg with the effects of Brexit, all overnight he would suddenly change. But because they're in a Westminster bubble, or they're in a powerful rich bubble, and it doesn't seem to affect one way or the other, or it affects them mildly, they don't care. And that's a really interesting point that I hadn't thought about. But those would be my comparisons. Prohibition, I couldn't make a comparison like that. That just got flipped around because everyone's drinking beer and alcohol behind the scenes and creating the mafia. I mean, that's arguably how the mafia got created. So it made this huge organized crime syndicate. Which, Brexit could do with seeing smuggling happen, because we don't check any liquors coming in from the border. They're going to create a massive, underworld crime syndicate. We've just got another super chat.
It's from Simon. Thank you so much, Simon. The Tories were imploding and Starmer decided boxing himself into the Brexit corner was the way to go. It was totally unnecessary and will affect the long game very negatively. What do you think about that, Femi? That is Starmer right on Brexit? Make Brexit work, or do you think it's necessary for him to say? I have this feeling that he's sort of saying it in order to win over these marginal seats that he needs if he wants to win an election, or is it just a completely ridiculous thing to do?
So often with Brexit, people try and present a false binary, which is the problem from the start of Brexit with the original question. But when people criticize Starmer's position, the automatic reflex from people who support Starmer is, no, but he can't fully oppose Brexit. He can't immediately reverse the referendum. We don't need him to. All he needs to do is do what should have been done right from about 2018-ish. This should have been happening. Go to the fishing villages, go to the farms, go to small businesses. If you physically go there, film conversation with them, ask them how Brexit is affecting their work. Ask them. And then ask them what they need to fix it. And they will say things like, well, all this paperwork needs to go. How do you want to do that? Well, we need to have an agreement with the EU that we basically make sure that the rules are in line so you don't need to check all the stuff that we make. Cool. I'll do that for you. Anything that's happening in terms of our relationship with the EU that is damaging the British people and British businesses, I will fix. I don't care about words like leave. I don't care about words like remain. I don't care about words like the single market. If it helps British businesses, I'll do it. That's the position he needs to take. Make it really, really clear that he does not give a crap about anything to do with the arguments we've been having over the last 6 years. He just cares about the people of the UK. That's the position he needs to take. And if he took that position, the beauty of that position is, in order for the Tories to argue against it, they have to admit that they're hurting people. Because if his position is, I will only change things if it's hurting people, you can only question that by admitting your Brexit is hurting people. That's what he needs to do.
I'm going to be the devil again. and just go, couldn't they just say, no, you're making it up, and actually it's all good?
Sorry, go on.
Well, he'll be going to the businesses. The whole beauty of this is he will not be saying anything himself. He will be just be asking. It'll be him going and meeting the people and asking, what do you need? And saying, all right, me as Prime Minister, I'll give it to you.
No, because I think that's perfect. Whether he can deliver is another thing, but the other thing is, I remember in the House of Commons where he stood up and he gave the example of a young couple who were wanting to buy their own home. I think it was during the Kwasi Kwarteng's mini budget. He described an example of a couple who wanted to buy their own home. Everything was ready to go, and then the budget came in and the interest rates were boosted, and they were no longer able to buy their home. And he gave a concrete example, a real case scenario where ordinary people were suffering the consequences of Tory policy. And the response from the other side was vaccines, get Brexit done, something like that. So it was, I agree 100%. Needs to go to the communities, listen to what they have to say, and say, look, I'm here to fix it. Okay, the Tories have broken it. I'm here to fix it. Yeah, it's not him saying we're going to undo Brexit. It's asking what is broken and what do you want us to do. Yeah, and then they can't attack those people. They'd be attacking the fishermen or the farmers or the small businesses if the Tories were to respond by saying no, everything is okay.
Yeah, which is the thing about Brexit from the start, because like when they were taking the mick out of us as Remainers for those 3 years, they were really taking the mick out of all the people that are now suffering, because we were there saying, don't do this, you'll hurt these people. When they were laughing at us, calling us Ramonas, Romaniacs, etc., it wasn't us they were making fun of. It was the very people we were trying to protect. If after Keir Starmer comes out with this, which is unlikely, I know, but if he does, they then attack him for it. They're attacking the people of the UK.
There was some really interesting stuff that came out from the polling. This is actually quite an interesting segue. I suppose everyone saw the Nigel Farage rant about white people. Did everyone see that? I mean, it's just racist as it gets, doesn't it? I mean, that to me was like, it's always been inferred that's him just directly complaining about it. So that's his big, which interestingly, Kanye West also had in the States, where we will talk about that. But the polling was really interesting because Nigel he misread it, shock, probably deliberately, maybe accidentally, in terms of how he analysed the data. But one of the interesting things in the sub-data related to what was shown in the census, the 2021 census, was that actually there's a lot of cohesion taking place. There's a lot of mixed race marriages taking place. I think it was something like 15%. And it's like, right, it shows that the Enoch Powell Rivers of Blood thing is complete fabrication. There was also something really, really powerful within that as well. Nigel, if he'd really wanted to, could have been like advocating for social cohesion and that this change was going to happen, and it should happen, and it could be a beautiful thing. He could have gone the Dr. King route. Instead, what he's done is just created more fear. He just seems like a scared little puppy most of the time. Like, I don't think puppy's right. Scared little devil would be probably more appropriate, who's just fear-mongering his own personal fears. I mean, the irony of the fact that he's actually like, his family heritage is from persecution. He's a Huguenot, and then fled to Britain, probably at the time without a passport or papers or anything else. Irony there. Or his kids have EU passports. Yeah. And yet, he's complained about that in the past. I thought it was really interesting. I don't know what everyone else's take on Farage's rant was. Femi?
Well, I just took the mick out of him, to be honest. I made the point that it's along the lines of the American conspiracy about the Great Replacement theory, that white people are being replaced, blah, 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 blah. And I just took the piss out of him because the background of that theory is the notion that we need to have more people making babies who are born in the UK. And he's responsible for an economic crisis that means that most people in the UK, many young people in the UK, are very scared about the idea of starting a family because they simply can't afford it. And so we're having to rely on immigration from abroad in order to keep the economy going. So I used the gif of DJ Khaled saying, "Congratulations, you played yourself."
But also something quite sinister about Nigel Farage, along with these things, is that he does. If you listen to some of the language he uses, he doesn't advocate for doing something, but he leaves the door open for others to do something. So in the clip where he was talking about the if you were listening, like on the surface, it was like, oh, this is what's happening, but he doesn't say what people should do, and that's really concerning because he's able to say, well, look, I didn't tell people to go out. I didn't tell people to go out and abuse refugees or to start a race war or anything like that. I'm just stating the facts. And this is this is him separating himself and allowing himself to to light the match and then run away. And it's really, really concerning for me because he's able to later say, but I did nothing wrong.
Yeah. So in the video, he says basically Birmingham, London, Manchester, no longer majority white, no longer majority white, they're minority white. He says, now maybe you think that's a good thing, maybe you think it's a bad thing. I'm not going to say. Yeah, it's that sort of way he does it because he knows what his audience thinks about it. He's just giving them the ball.
I think there was a nuance within that as well because it actually showed that the majority of the people in the area are white. I mean, it's ridiculous to even have this conversation, but because he's brought it up, I feel like we should engage. 75% of those people have British passports, but they're not born British, if that makes sense, or born on the land of the UK. I think it's a better way of describing it. Yeah. Not that it makes a difference. And so, again, he's manipulating the results, or he hasn't read them properly. It's one or the other. There's no in between. Like he's got it wrong. It's just what is the reason for it? I think most of us can guess why Nigel has got that completely wrong.
Scaremongering and fear.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see that actually his predictions are completely wrong. His actions have completely scuppered what he wanted. And
I'm sure he's come out and apologized in a video, no?
Yeah, he does it all the time. As you said before, Martin Luther King is often faced with a choice of, do I do this? Do I go down the Martin Luther King route? And he often takes that route.
Well, it was I caught Richard Tice being interviewed at the Oxford Union, and Ash from Novora Media was there and scuppered him, and you should have seen his facial reaction. Beautiful. She said, you're using the same language about Black Lives Matter as what people used against Dr. King. Now, what unfortunately she didn't do is follow it up and go, do you have a problem with Dr. King? To which that would have been a really interesting thing. But even Richard Tice, I couldn't tell if he was like, dang, she's got me in his facial reaction, or was it a facial reaction that was like, I didn't know that. Huh, interesting. I probably lean to the first choice out of the two. We'll not know until someone brings it up with him, but someone's got to go out there and ask, do you have a problem with Dr. King? Because if you got a problem with Dr. King, it's not a vote winner. You'll look, I mean, it depends. I mean, obviously there are certain groups that would probably love that, but I've not heard anyone sort of go, hey, Dr. King said this, Black Lives Matter is saying the same thing. You're using the same stuff they used on Dr. King with Black Lives Matter. What is your issue?
A socialist, etc. It's the same stuff we've heard for a very long time.
Except Dr. King has got a national holiday named after him. He's an icon. He's loved by, I would say, most now. At the time, interestingly, though, he wasn't. I think the polls showed that only 25% of white people in the United States at the time supported Dr. King's actions, which is obviously the majority of the population within the United States, or the biggest group within the United States. I think at the time it's 75% were white in the United States at the time, but only 25% of that 75% supported him. So it shows that, again, history's repeating, but also people haven't learned their history. And it's sad.
Sorry, I just read out a quick super chat from Fearless Wolf. Thanks so much, Fearless Wolf. Human race started in Africa. We Scots just wanted a colder climate. Probably. Alex, you mentioned something about a certain American appearing on a crazy channel.
Yeah, well, Femi did us the good graces of mentioning DJ Khaled. Well, we could talk about musicians. Who watched Kanye West on the Alex Jones show? Did either of you see that?
I saw clips of it. I didn't see the whole thing.
I saw clips of it as well. He's a very special man. Thing is, it's important to remember that the guy's obviously not mentally well. Now that doesn't excuse what he does, but it's important to remember that you don't get, if you're in the limelight, you have a responsibility, and there are people who take you seriously. So from it is in the greater good to focus more on what society needs than what he needs. And as far as his effect on society, it is bad, because he is a major figure who is respected and by a lot of people and admired by a lot of people. And for him to go on a broadcast and say, look, everyone has something to contribute to society, especially Hitler, and that he loves Hitler, and he even denied the Holocaust, that's at the ceiling. That is at the ceiling of the worst things that somebody in his position can say. So, you have to just, and it's important to look at it in context, because Kanye West was held up by the right as the proof that that Black people can support right-wing people like Donald Trump, and apparently that includes Adolf Hitler.
It's interesting to see that Trump started to disassociate himself from Kanye. We can't call him Kanye West anymore, can we? You've got to call him Ye. Had to disassociate himself from Ye, which is interesting. But I mean, have you seen the movie Watchmen or read the comics? Watchmen.
I watched the movie.
He had the mask on. It was carbon copy of several of the characters from Watchmen. He had the mask on and a big suit, so you couldn't see his face. And you're like, as you said, he's off his meds. He's not taking them. He's divorced his wife. Oh, his wife has divorced him. And you're going, right, and now you're on TV. I thought the worst part of it was Alex Jones was the voice of reason. How do you get to that stage? You've got to be right off the money to have gone to the stage like Alex Jones, who is a conspiracy theorist and has just been sued for 500 million, is having to try and both calm Kanye West down, trying to give him an out, and is also having to argue with him and disagree with him.
Which makes sense, because he can't afford to lose his sponsors. So if you've got somebody on his podcast saying Hitler was a hero, then I'm not surprised that he's actually going to show a little bit of the bare minimum of integrity.
We just got another super chat.
Thank you so much, Calvin lad. Keep it up. But my big problem with these is that they give him an outlet. This person has mental health issues. Mm-hmm. Why the hell are you bringing him on? You don't know what he's going to say. You can't control him. And also, if he has a massive following, that what he's going to say is going to have an impact, because a lot of people following him are probably open to maybe what he's saying is true, or maybe they don't know, they haven't studied the history of Nazi Germany, and they probably think, well, maybe he has a point, or maybe maybe we need to see both sides. Remember Trump saying at the rallies, well, there are good people on both sides. This sort of approach.
And I think that's spot on. I think that nails it. I think, especially given the mental health angle, I think we need to stop focusing so much on Kanye West himself and start focusing on the people who keep putting a microphone in his face.
We're back to this, in a sense, back to the point of what I was saying earlier about Brexit, where we keep inviting on Daniel Hannan or David Davis. David Davis turning up at a it's a completely different thing, but turning up at the negotiations with Michel Barnier without a piece of paper or a pen, claiming that well, we don't need that because we hold all the cards. They need us more than we need them, and then and he returned in disgrace, and then he's rolled out every week to talk to the BBC or maybe not the BBC, but to Times Radio or LBC or I don't know what.
And the thing is,
go ahead, Femi.
I was going to say, the thing is, personally, obviously, I work in a media space. I do TV stuff, and I engage with the mainstream media on a semi-regular basis. And so I try not to the word, well, to put it, I'm not sure if we're allowed to swear, poo where I eat. I try to be at least tactful when I criticize the media, but the extent to which so many of these channels have made it clear that they are not out. They are basically out to be the bad guys. If you look at Question Time as a prime example, you've got the fact that they've invited Nigel Farage onto their show. What is it, 37 times and like 8 times since the referendum was called? It's insane. And given that now, after years of debate, now that it is very, very clear that people on his side of the argument, and I'm including Labour, who supported Brexit for 3 years, they were wrong and are the reason why the UK is in such a state right now. Have they brought on the people that were saying from the start Brexit should not happen, there needs to be a second referendum? No. Who do they keep bringing on? IEA types, people from the shady think tanks like the Institute for Economic Affairs. They'll bring in Nigel Farage. They put on the absolute worst people who brought the UK to its knees and brought about the damage we're seeing now. And they don't bring on the people who actually were right about this from the start. And then you've got people. Then you've got. There was on Ian King's show. They had a discussion about what to do in response to the mini budget. They were saying how we've got a problem of a lack of economic growth. How do we fix that? Well, we tried to give massive tax breaks to the rich, and the market said that we couldn't do that. So I guess we're stuck with low growth. No, your own experts say that Brexit is cutting £100 billion of our economy. You know there are solutions to growth. You know that it's reversing Brexit, or at least undoing the damage of Brexit, but you're choosing not to do that. And so it is clear that there's an intentional decision to not talk about the things that will actually make life better. I mean, Beth Rigby, to her credit, actually admitted that a couple of weeks ago when she said in her interview with Jeremy Hunt, let's talk about the elephant in the room. We don't talk about it. Journalists feel that we're not allowed to talk about Brexit because without feeling like we're attacking Brexit. So she actually admitted the failure of the media to discuss Brexit, even though it is the title of the manifesto of the sitting government.
Yes.
We've only got a few minutes left, so 2 things to that. Femi, have you been invited? Just a quick yes or no. Have you been invited onto Question Time?
No, they called me in 2018, but never called back.
So I'm just going to say to all of our supporters today, please tweet today if you can. Go on Twitter and tweet at Question Time. Get Femi on. If we could do that as a mass thing right now, that would be great. Please do that, because it's not right that Farage has had so much and the other side of the argument has had so little. On top of that, we've just had a question and we've got 3 minutes left. Thank you, Sunak, for the super chat. We've got to answer this in 3 minutes, so let's be as quick as possible. How is the Northern Ireland Protocol going?
No government in Northern Ireland because the DUP refused to form a government with the Sinn Féin at the top. As a result, they're trying to renegotiate it. They're considering doing a Northern Ireland Protocol bill, which will eventually allow them to override the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is part of the Brexit deal. Essentially, you've got a major part of the 52% in rebellion, breaking down the government of Northern Ireland because they're rebelling against what is literally Brexit. So it is an impasse that we have not solved.
And one of the most disgusting things I saw this week was a member of the DUP standing up in the House of Commons complaining to the government minister about £400 that has not been given to people in Northern Ireland to help them deal with the cost of living crisis because the Assembly is not operating. So she was complaining about, why isn't the government helping people? And the government minister, hats off to him, Tory, he stood up and he said, well, because we can't, because you are blocking the Assembly from forming, or blocking the executive from forming. So
the DUP complaining about the effects of their own actions is really, really just on brand.
Yeah.
Complaining about their actions that are hurting people.
We also have another one from number 3 who says the irony is that we have to conform to EU rules whether we stay in or stay out or not. Yeah, whether we stay in or stay out. At the moment, all this about taking back control. No, well, if you're a third country, you have to follow the rules. But
if you want to import, into the EU, you've got no choice. On that note, we're done. Merry Christmas, everyone. I know it flew by. It always does when we have this show. Femi, did that feel like a bit of therapy for you?
Yes, it is. It's good to get that off my chest.
Yeah.
Clearly, I have emotions.
Did it get a bit off your chest? Did you feel the same, Max? Did that get a bit off your chest?
A little bit better.
Well, on that note, thank you very much, everyone. Femi, thank you so much for coming on. Like, really, really appreciate that.
Thank you for inviting me.
And we'll probably see you guys next week for the next Sunday roast. Either pre-recorded, or we'll have it live. We'll have to sort that out, won't we, Alex? But we'll have a wonderful guest once again for next time. So everyone, have a great Sunday, and we'll see you next time for our next Sunday roast.